Bert. Get him. Yeah! Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. Hey everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. I am back in the saddle, meaning I am back in the kennel on a Sunday morning doing my intro, getting this episode out on a Sunday, which is what, I typically do, but I told you, May was mayhem. June was whatever it was. It was, what rhymes with June? It was a jumble, okay? It was a jumble. But anyway, I'm back home. I had to make an extra trip down to Virginia. We had a fellow that was working on the house, and he inadvertently hooked up a water line that was under the sink that was disconnected by me from a water treatment system. He thought it ran the refrigerator that was downstairs, like the ice maker. And he hooked up this line after he finished working in my kitchen, and he flooded my basement. So I had to go down there and assess the damage, and luckily he had pulled out the carpet in the room that got bad, and I had extra flooring from upstairs, and Jesus criminy, Anyway, I'm back, okay? I'm back. I think I'm going to be back until I leave for North Dakota. I don't know what else I'm going to be doing this summer besides, interviews and talking to you on Sundays and Zoom rooms for my patrons twice a month. We had an interesting one last Thursday. Decent-sized crowd showed up, and at the end we started really getting into a little bit of the Matt Ranella saga and the pros and cons and the agrees and the disagrees with his viewpoints. And if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, Matt Ranella has a podcast called Hunt Quietly, and I guess you could call it the anti-podcast to all social media and television hunting shows. But anyway, my HDP talk level, that's the second tier in Patreon, they just got that final one the other day. I cut that up into a couple pieces and sent it out to them. So that's what you get for that, and the rest of you can just come on a Zoom room, get discounts on stuff and all the other stuff you do. You know what that is. It's Patreon, and you just look up Hunting Dog Podcast. So that's fine. Do it, don't do it. I love you. I love the ones that do it more than the ones that don't. I love Pike gear. I love my Pike gear. Brent's not going to be happy because I'm going to need another pair of the Dakotas. Yeah. Well, I started wearing them doing chores. They're so freaking comfortable. They're not just hunting pants. I think of them like work pants. But anyway, I think I finally lost a few pounds, and I got a bunch of paint on them, and I got them cut, and I cut them on a... Anyway, sorry about that, Brent. I'm going to need another pair. If you want me to look good, walking around in Pike gear, like you will be comfortable and fashionable when you do that this hunting season. So check out Pike gear. And if you didn't, we had a big giveaway, the grouse hunt giveaway, and that's all done. That was $7,500 in prizes. So stay tuned. There'll be another one next year on that one for sure. And Onyx, I can't thank Onyx enough. In my partner Justin McGrail couldn't thank Onyx enough. Onyx has teamed up with the Upland Institute, and we are part of their Onyx Elite system, where Onyx Elite members get to see some of the content from the Upland Institute for free. That's right, for free. I mean, it's not going to get your dog trained, but it's going to give you some really good segments, get you interested, and you might just decide to train your dog instead of screaming at it this year. And I couldn't do it with Onyx. I know where I've been. I set a pin, but I tell you what, they are changing the game for everybody. They have Onyx Elites, whether you're a turkey hunter, deer hunter, elk hunter, off-roader. Check out Onyx Elite. It's I don't know how you could go without it. And I'm not even allowed to tell you the special deal that they get. I'm not even allowed. By law, I can't tell you that. I can tell you that my Weatherby shotgun was used by my son-in-law yesterday at a bachelor party, and he spanked the clays with that gun. He wanted my old he used to borrow my old side-by-side. I have a Ithaca SKB, and I told him it was in Virginia. It was locked up in the safe, so I gave him the Weatherby 20 gauge to use. And he's like, "Can I buy it?" I said, "No." Well, you could probably buy one, and if you wanted to buy one, you could go right to Weatherby and use a promo code HDP, and they will knock some money off of that. No other gun company does that for a sponsorship. The only thing that gun shoots better than lead is Boss shot shells on birds. Yeah, it was made for them. Well, that's an exaggeration. It was made for all shotguns. You know me. Boss shot shells, they just got their new factory set up. They had originally always worked inside of another building, and now they have a dedicated building in the same general area, southern Michigan, and they are cranking out the shells for this hunting season, but don't dilly and don't dally. Get yourself some Boss shot shells. And Boss was kind enough they donated shells to the grouse giveaway. Oh, yeah. As well as Onyx, and as well as Pike Gear did, and so Gunner Kennels did. Oh, speaking of Gunner Kennels, I just inherited. I wonder if I should probably raffle this off. I just inherited like a brand new Gunner Intermediate kennel. I did. My daughter Mackenzie, who you guys have all heard me talk about. Most of you heard this story. A fella back in the day bought a dog from me, bought a Bronco. And when I met him in Charlottesville, Virginia, I told him I had 3 daughters and 2 of them hunted, and I was looking for one good son-in-law. As it turned out, me and my big mouth started something, and that is now my son-in-law. They had 2 Broncos. They moved to another town, and they had to temporarily move to a condo. So now I have 2 very geriatric, 1 obese Bronco in my kennel, which I needed like a hole in the head. But now I've got yet another Gunner kennel that he had bought when he knew I was peddling Gunner kennels. And so yeah, let's turn that into something. Give me an idea what you think we should do with that. We'll give that kennel a name. It's like if you want to. Well, you'll figure it out. Walton's. Oh my God. Oh my effing God. They just sent me a bunch of spices. And they're going to actually have my daughter Jessica, who has a master's degree in nutrition. They're going to bring her on their podcast in the future. But along with the new spices, we needed to do some content to make like bear sausage from Alaska. I just got the new catalog. Now, my wife gets a lot of catalogs like clothing and shoes and stuff. This catalog, this is the Walton's Home Processors catalog, okay? It is 150 pages of stuff that you're going to have to temper. You're going to have to temper your impulse to buy all the stuff they have in here. I mean everything from smokers to slicers to meat tubs to sausage casings to grinders to stuffers to spices to string wrapping for roast. I mean, this makes me. Boy, if I didn't know I was so bad at, running a business, I'd want to open up a wild game kitchen, like and just change my whole thing. Check out, of course I want you to buy the products of my sponsors, but you will not be sorry when you see this 2022 Home Processors catalog. Just go to waltons.com, order it, and tell them, in there, somewhere in that order form, just for the catalog. It doesn't cost you nothing. I mean, it's like food porn, and kitchen porn. I mean, there's things in here like going, oh, that would be so handy. Like a hog scraper, a bone dust scraper, the magnetic kitchen rack knives. You don't see them everywhere. Beautiful sharpening stones, steels, stainless steel tables. Oh, my God, I'm going on and on and on and on and on. I'm just so excited about it. Anyway, they got everything but the meat. You get the catalog, and you'll have everything but the meat. Purina is in my – I'm gonna have to call my contacts there with these 2 new Broncos. They're going to eat me out of house and home, especially the fat one. She's on the diet, by the way. But she will be eating Purina just like all my dogs. I don't change. My daughter said, oh, Dad, I kind of went to a cheaper dog food. I'm like, well, they're not going to a cheaper dog food. No. I don't know why anybody would want to do that. But they do. I will tell you that no, that's I'm going to say that for an HTP talk. There's a competitor out there who's kind of left people in the lurch, and we won't talk about that on this podcast. We really shouldn't. I could talk about the new Garmin. Oh, the new right here in my hand, the new Garmin Instinct 2S Solar, babe. Yeah, right here. Guess where I got that from? Any idea? Do you have a clue? Come on. I know you're like, oh, Ron, just get through with it. We want to hear a new podcast. I got that from W Supply. That's right. That's where you go to find your Garmin products. You can find a lot of products. But when you're looking for the best in canine navigation and training, you're going to get a Garmin. You're going to realize that that's what you need to do. And W is the only place to buy it from. Canine Athlete is going to be, I'm going to have Kevin from Canine Athlete on probably in the next 2 weeks. We're going to talk about all their hydration, all their people products, all their dog products, all their everything. And so we will have a giant infomercial with Canine Athlete, Wilderness Athlete. That's right. And I put a request in for a decked drawer system for my Transit. They don't have one. Can you believe it? They don't have one for my decked drawer system. I'm so sad. I'm stuck using this Transit because my Dodge finally, the front end finally went out on it. Like I had the engine replaced 2 years ago. It had a lifetime engine and drivetrain warranty, but I brought it in for another problem, and they're like, yeah, your front end's shot. Your U-joints, upper, lower ball joint shot, axle shot. That was like $8,500, and I got my neighbor, who's an old shade tree mechanic who closed down and retired. Well, he's now a shade tree mechanic. He used to have a shop. And we got that fixed. But I miss, while he's fixing it, well, I got that fixed. Now I got to get the power steering fixed. Anyway, I miss my deck drawer system. I got to do a job next week in Lowell, Michigan, and I won't have my deck drawer system. I don't know what I'll do without it. I know that every time I go to the training grounds, I see yet another. Terry Barons, my buddy, showed up, new truck, new drawer system. I think they should just sell them with it. Yeah, they should sell you a new truck with that. Everything that I talk about, along with a subscription of Shooting Sportsman magazine, and they ought to just give you the course of Upland Institute so you could be a better trainer. And the other thing they could get you, if there was enough of them in the continent, which there isn't, is gum leaf boots. Now, they've got a decent supply of the Royal Zips in, and they're getting more boots in, but Jack is back. So check out, if you've been waiting for gum leaf and you've checked the website, I'm not saying there's any left now. They became extremely popular. I mean, it's my go-to on-off grouse boot, rain boot, judging boot, taking the dogs out in the morning in the dew boot. It's the boot. It's the boot to do. Gum leaf. Was that all corny enough? Was that all pretty? Yeah, that's just me. It's been a while since I had to do one of these, and that was only take 2. And I'm not going to redo it. I think I covered everybody. Pike Gear, Onyx, Weatherby, Boss Shot Shells, Waltons, Purina, Gunner Kennels, Garmin, Cannon Athlete, W Hunting Supply, blah, 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 gum leaf boots. Yes, I did. This episode, I'll tell you how I got to meet Tana. And her name is not Tana Montana. It's Tana Kradolfer. Okay? Kradolfer. But she kind of goes by Tana from Montana. It's a lot easier than trying to remember the name Kradolfer. And she's a lifelong resident of Montana, ranch girl, farm girl. She's not a girl anymore, but she grew up on a ranch, working a ranch as a little girl, and stayed in Montana, got into Britneys, got to know Ben Williams back in the day when Winston was alive. So that tells you how many decades Tana's been at this. And she has literally built a training and mentoring business outside of Bozeman that is amazing. And her history with the Britneys, everyone's, not everyone. That's an exaggeration. I do get emails like, "Hey, Ron, are you ever going to do an episode on Britneys?" And as my memory served me, I did one with Fred Overby years ago, and I ought to get him back on again. But Tana is American Brittanys. Okay, big, blocky head, legs square. She pays attention to conformation. She pays attention. She's got some stuff. She was a what would you call it? A disciple of the Smith seminars, the Hickok seminars. She used to host the events. She actually hosted the event I was at 4 or 5 years ago. And I just didn't meet her. She was behind the scenes. She was the organizer for it. Interesting woman, interesting life, great dogs. And she might even talk you into a new breed of dog. You never know. Don't say never. Never say never. So here's Tana Kradolfer from Montana, True Grit Brits. I mean, how could you not want that? I'm a big John Wayne fan. Tana with True Grit Brits. I can't wait. I told her that next year, 2023, I'm going to spend some serious weeks in Montana. I've only touched Montana a little bit with my shotgun barrel. And I'm going to make it my goal to do a big Montana run next year and spend some time with Tana, her Brits. And who knows? The way I'm getting new breeds of dogs all the time, maybe I'll come home with a Brit next year. You never know. Don't say never. I love you guys. I love you girls. I love you girls more. Bye.
It's just, anyway, When, in those days, you went to town once a month to get supplies.
Oh, I run to the gas station every 4.5 hours.
Yeah, and so you'd go and you'd get everything you needed, and
if you didn't have it, you didn't get it till next month.
You didn't need it till next month.
Oh,
we'd go get groceries and and then my mom we'd go buy yardage, like something to sew something.
Right.
Because back then you sewed your shirts and your.
Oh yeah, everything got fixed or repaired. Well,
yes,
let me get this button started before we lose any good stories.
Okay.
Hey everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast, back from hiatus in Alaska and Virginia, and I've been threatening this lady for many months to get her on the podcast, and we finally got things to work out. Tana Kradolfer, but better known as Tana from Montana, because everybody has a hard time pronouncing Kradolfer. But Tana was introduced to me actually through Justin McGrail, but it even turns out that at one time I went out to a seminar in Bozeman, and it was more than likely, if I'm not mistaken, Tana, choreographed or put together by you, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, that would have been a George Hickok seminar.
Yeah. And
yeah.
And I think I brought a camera with me, and I know I recorded something with him, but I guess our paths didn't cross enough or maybe I was trying to learn something from George. Maybe that's all I was focused on.
Sure. Well, and a lot of times in those seminars, I try to say behind the scenes, and I'm either running for the lunch or waiting for George to give me the sign to go get a couple birds or whatever. But the last seminar I did, when you do enough of them, you just wing it. You just do the whole thing. So, anyway, but yeah.
Let's start a little bit back from the beginning. I picked up just a piece of when I hit the record button, a piece of us laughing about going to town and going to our first McDonald's. But that was just the last piece where we were laughing. So, give everybody an idea where you're at and how long you've been there, roughly, and why you're still there.
Well, I've been working with bird dogs, Britneys mostly, since the early 90s. And my husband was an avid hunter when I met him, and he had friends with Britneys. And so I got a taste of hunting with Britneys. And when we decided to get married, I had to have a dog. I had to have a dog of some sort. So obviously it was going to have to be a Brittany.
Gotcha.
So we started with that, and I just loved the Britneys so much. And shortly after I got started, I liked raising animals because I grew up on a farm, so we always had some sort of baby animal. So I decided it would be fun to breed some. So I got hooked up with some, researched and got with some of the better producers. Ben Williams. My first stud dog was a Ben Williams.
Oh,
Brittany.
He's right. He's right, basically in your, I don't say backyard, but he's not far away from you. Right. That makes perfect sense because he was kind of one of the first bird hunters out that way back in the early '60s, and he had his Britneys out there.
Yes.
So we'll show our age a little bit. That when you started researching Britneys, you did not have Facebook, Instagram, or probably even a good computer. Where were you getting Where were you getting your information from? Was it like Field Dog Stud Book and American Field, or where did you find the dogs from?
Yeah, all of that. Knowing a lot of the local guys who bird hunted and fished a lot. Being sportsmen, you ran into these guys at the local bar or whatever. But we also had the Missouri Headwaters Gun Dog Club had been recently formed in the late 80s. And so I got to know all the guys in that gun dog club, and they would give you some names of people that they knew or dogs they had hunted over or guided with, so I got hooked up with the right guys through the gun dog club.
How many women were with the right guys in the bar besides you and your husband? Was there a lot of husband and wife teams out there, or were you guys a rarity?
Some. We had a lot of we had some really great husband and wife duos, and we would go hunting together, and we'd all have a great time because the wives owned shotguns and knew how to use them.
I like that.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, we would maybe say if we shared a ride, back in the day you could do the Grand Slam where everybody in the truck shot a limit of Huns, a limit of Sharpies, and a limit of Roosters.
Oh, that's
and we'd be going along, and I'd be the one that needed one more Hun, and it's 6:30. And everybody's ready for dinner and a cocktail, and I need one more Hun. But
what did you need more, the Hun or the cocktail?
I needed the cocktail at that point. But we'd get it done and have a lot of fun. But yeah, there was plenty of gals around that grew up in the prairie that knew
their way around, and it's just more of a lifestyle. It wasn't like It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to take this up. It was like they were just all raised with it.
No,
and it was just
we
normal.
were all raised with it. Yeah.
So you started out on a farm or ranch, or was it both, farm and ranch?
Both.
And
grain, raising wheat and barley and growing, cattle and sheep and hogs and riding horses. And
I got to imagine Montana looked. I hate to state the obvious because everybody calls. What do they call Bozeman? Bozeman.
Boangeles.
Boangeles, that's it. Boangeles. So it had to be paradise when you were still doing that, just with friends and family basically.
Sure. No, I mean, I've lived a charmed life. I call it. I got to experience the last of the glory days.
Mm-hmm. And that goes down to just even access and just bird numbers and everything, right?
Everything, yeah. You could be driving along and just see roosters and pull into a yard and, can we go get those? And they'd say, sure, go on ahead. Access and permission was just easy to get and wasn't really an issue about it. But
I want to definitely focus on your breed of choice, but I can't help but wonder when we talk about access and stuff. How long do you think that lasted? When did it become like almost a difficulty or a point to where you just said, you know what, I know the places I can still go. I'm not gonna look for a new door to knock on, or do you still?
Yeah, I would say probably 15 years ago. Maybe.
Yeah.
15 to 20. Yeah.
Well, that's sad, but that it didn't. Apparently, it didn't change your ambition to do what you're doing.
We still hunt a fair amount of public land, particularly block management. I mean, you've got places where you want to go, but we also lease a fair amount of land.
Okay, just so you have a place of a rancher that you know that you can. What about your family place back in the day? I'm trying to picture, did anybody ever come up to your dad and mom or you and say, hey, can we go chase those Huns or pheasants on your property? Or
Constantly.
Oh, really?
Constantly. During hunting season, you couldn't all leave at once. Never, ever.
Really?
Always
Wow.
has to be somebody on the place.
Just because someone's going to be knocking on the door.
Or
Or-
if they can't, there would be people, if they knocked, we didn't have cameras or anything.
Right.
If they didn't get anybody, they just go on in.
Wow. So that was just kind of a family rules. Like somebody's got to be back here during hunting season.
Yeah, and it's that way today of those ranchers. They know it. They have to police all of it because people take liberties with
Yeah, that's a shame.
private land.
So your first Brittany, you said your first Brittany, the stud, you used one of Ben Williams' dogs.
It was a puppy out of Winston.
Oh, I was going to say, I remember the one name I remember from interviewing him was Winston, mainly because it was the name of a famous cigarette that I smoked back in the 70s.
Yeah, and Winston was a great big 55-pound overstandard, blocky head, big old dog. It was just a powerhouse dog. He could power through any cover. He was a really quite good dog.
So you actually got to see Winston in his day as well,
Sure.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I did not know you had that connection. That's really neat.
Yeah.
So what kept you, and I'm guilty of this, maybe because I live in good grouse country. I live in a good state for rough grouse, but I'm one of the wanderers that's like, oh, I'm going to try this breed. And then, 10 years later, I want to keep one of them, but I'm going to try the wire hair now. And then I went to the Bronco, and now I've got a wire-haired Vizsla. What kept you with the Britneys?
Oh, just true love, I guess. I just once I started raising them, once I started having litters, it was just the pattern was set. It's just
I guess you got so much.
I was lucky enough, to get really good breeding stock, and then I decided I would create a line of dogs that could keep performing at the level we had and.
Yeah, so at that point, it'd be silly to
yeah.
change saddles at that point. Yeah, because
Right, and then I got hooked up with, I was lucky enough to get a really good mentor, somebody who had, at the time when I got started, had three dual champions in her possession.
Wow.
So the Brittany has always been a dog you can get a bench championship on and a field title on. And it still looks like the same dog for the most part.
That's nice to hear. Yeah.
A little bit less nowadays, but back then I could show up to the show ring with my bird dogs.
Right. Just you could hunt them one day and show them the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So did you do a fair amount of that yourself? Put the dogs on for the.
I did do a little bit. I dabbled in that. It taught me a lot about form and function and structure.
Which
It taught
goes
me
to
about
breeding, sure.
Yeah, what kind of dogs I wanted to build. Because the field dogs at the time that you came across all carried a lot of loin. They were very leggy. And the Brittany standard told me that a Brittany is supposed to be a fairly square dog. Essentially, the Brittany is a square dog. And the dogs I was seeing and looking at to purchase were not square. They carried a lot of loin.
Okay. And what could that do? Is that something that functionally will not serve them well in older years, or is it just something you wanted to stay closer to the breed standard just because you love the breed?
I wanted to stay in the 30. Brittany is supposed to be a 30 to 40 pound dog. And when you get up in the 50, 60 pound range, it's a little bit different shaped dog.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't its intended. It was never its intended size. It's almost like when I see. I back in Florida one time, I saw a pair of short hairs. I was at a function, and if either the male or female were over 35 pounds, I'd eat my shoe. And I kept wondering, like, why did somebody do that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Shrink a breed, basically. And I remember the person say, well, I like smaller dogs. They're easier to keep, less food. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and my reply would have been, why didn't you get a Brittany?
Right, or something that is, a 30 to 40 pound dog.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So I tried to build them right, because if you don't have the front end of the dog matching the back end of the dog, I like dogs that run with effortless. They don't expend much energy out in the field running.
Right.
When they're built right, they
Yeah.
run efficiently, and they're gated well, and they can go all day.
With some conditioning, their structure can go all day then. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're so birdy and have so much drive that even when you build them terribly, they'll still go all day.
They'll still go all day.
But they may be done at age 10 or 11.
Right. What's the oldest Brittany you ever had out there still doing a bit of a field hunt for you?
Oh, they'll go till 13 and a half. I've had, they usually are passing on between 15 and 16 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good age. That's a good spell.
Yeah.
So what all, I know you're involved with field trials and you do a lot more you used to do a lot of training. Now you do more mentoring. Let's talk a little bit about that. How did that all morph into? How did you get to there?
Well, I think it started happening when our local pro, who we had a great guy named Butch Nelson, who he trained a lot of different types of dogs, labs, pointing dogs. He got me started he was one of my mentors and helped me along in learning, and also starting in the field trial. When he moved out of the Bozeman area, we had no local pro. And so if you've been in dogs for 20 some years, like it or not, you become the local expert.
So you inherited it, kind of.
Yeah, and so you start getting calls from, I've got this kind of dog and I don't know what to do. He's doing this or he's doing that. And so, you just get asked, I know you know Butch, so, you maybe know how to answer this question.
Wow.
So you just kind of get, I morphed into it. Plus I had spent so much time doing seminars with Rick, learning from Butch, and putting the time in teaching the actual methods that, if your name comes up in conversation, I people know that you've been involved in teaching people. So
it's kind of like you just slowly became the trainer. You were learning to be a trainer. You're learning to train your own dogs. Then people started leaning on you, and you're like, it's almost like one day you wake up and go, gosh darn it, I guess I am a trainer.
Well, like all of a sudden you realize I have a PhD in dogs somehow.
Right.
Somehow I got the PhD.
Well, you've seen so many dogs, and that's the key to it, isn't it? Just seeing so many
dogs,
different.
Looking at dogs, watching dogs, and things have changed. Now we're training house pets.
Good point.
Yeah.
Now, not to say that your dogs have never slept in a bed with you, or maybe you're of the
Actually,
ilk that,
they don't. I don't have any dogs on the bed.
Really?
No.
Boy, see.
No.
Yeah, just even on little vacation.
No, well, maybe in the camper.
Okay.
For a few minutes, and my bitches get to come in the house when they're getting, before they whelp, and when they're puppies, they get to come in the house and be puppies.
Right.
But they have a really nice kennel facility that's heated and cooled and so they're kennel dogs.
Yeah. Well, I always tell everybody my dogs are all kennel dogs too, except when I go on the road, they all jump in bed with me. Just because I go to Red Roof Inns, and Red Roof Inns doesn't seem to care how many dogs, at least if I don't tell them how many dogs. I've had 4 dogs in a king-size bed with me at a Red Roof Inn.
Oh, my goodness.
And not one of them has ever been, I can honestly say, I don't think any of my dogs that are at least currently living and in the kennel here were ever raised in a house and house trained. They just get to go in with me when they're older.
Sure.
And it's funny, I mean, that same dog I would not put in I call it my wife's house. I would not say, oh, yeah, leave him in there overnight. He'd probably get into some trouble. But, a couple of years of being a good kennel dog and going on trips and getting crate trained and going on, on hunts, it's almost like you could bring that dog into a house for a night, and it's almost like it already was a house dog,
Yeah, true. They do well when they have to come in. They do fine. They may get your best leather shoes, but
yeah, that happens. That happens. Yeah. I've only lost one. Actually, I lost a really nice pair of slippers.
You just don't need that stuff lying around where they can get at it. But yeah. But no, I'm not a real big fan of dogs on the bed. It's not my. Brittany, they always want to sleep on your head, and I don't want that thing up there. It's hot enough. I don't need their hot little body with their breath in my face. I just don't thank you.
Well, and it's funny because you mentioned Rick Smith, and I had went to his place in Virginia years ago to interview him. And so I get up to his house, and it's nothing pretentious, but it's a nice country home with a nice big office and a lot of memorabilia in it and everything. And we started talking, and before I hit the record button, I said, well, Rick, where's your dogs? He goes, well, they're in the kennel. I'm like, well, you don't have any in the house? He goes, hell no. I don't want to listen to dogs. I train dogs all day long. His kennel's about 300 yards away down a hill. He says, I don't want to see them dogs. I got to see them tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I am with it. It's like, I spend all day, every day, 24/7 with them.
With dogs.
I don't need them in the bed, too.
Yeah, so, no, I get it. I get it. So when did you officially hang your shingle out, or did it kind of just come?
I never
slowly?
Officially hung it. Yeah, it's
still just there because people know who you are.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's been a word of mouth thing. I mean, my kennel name is True Grit Brits, and I've sold puppies all over the United States and Canada for many years. And so people just kind of find you.
Yeah, and so you don't even really have to advertise or anything. You've just got a name out there for it.
Right.
That's a good way to go. It's better than gundogbreeders.com for sure. How did you the shooting part? You probably grew up shooting, or maybe you didn't on the ranch. I know you said you didn't get to hunt much.
We killed vermin, skunks, and a few deer, but the actual shotgunning I had to learn really quick. I had to get on board. So I shot a fair amount of sporting clays to try to get swinging on birds.
Right, but the gun part wasn't the thing. It was the scatter gun part of the learning it. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I asked a couple people this recently. How old were you when? And this is it has a rabbit hole we won't go down. How old were you when you could grab a rifle or something off the back porch and get rid of some vermin that was out on the farm without having to ask Dad?
Yeah, probably about 8.
8? Okay.
7, 8, yeah.
And you'd go take the gun, unload it, load it, put it back, and...
Yep. And we would drive the 1-ton truck.
At what age, Tana?
Because you could push in the clutch when you were 8, because you could stand up and get the clutch pushed in and...
So you could drive a standard transmission pickup truck when you were 8 years old?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Said nobody ever in the town I grew up in.
Well, you were, you had to go do a chore. Dad would say, "Bring me iced tea at 2:00," and you'd have to buzz up there with some tea and find him on the combine, get him some iced tea, or.
Yeah,
whatever.
So it was just a matter of being. It wasn't so much that they wanted to teach you to drive; it's just they wanted to put you to work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, indentured servitude, actually.
Is that family farm still in existence, or is that gone now?
Yes, it is. My brother still has the farm that I was raised, and his middle son is taking it over. So it's.
Oh, that's cool.
About to be 3 generations, right on the banks of the Yellowstone River.
Oh, that sounds nice.
So yeah, it was good. Yeah. It was a good place.
Is the hunting still good over there, or is it better by you right now?
No, the hunting is still better east of Billings. I live in what we call Region 3, in south central Montana. And we have some mountain grouse around here and a few turkeys. Mm-hmm. But the other upland bird species aren't doing real well around here.
Okay, and it's in the general Bozeman, Belgrade area.
Because we've got a lot of boomtown stuff going on, building and expansion, and but it's there's still a few spots you can go, but as our community grows, you have to go out further and further to get some wild experiences. So. Know somebody.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Like anything, I'm sure eventually Belgrade and Bozeman will be connected. At some point.
Of course. Yeah.
It's not that far out. What do you think? I actually had somebody write me the other day, and they said when you go look up the podcast, you can, unless you really do a deep dive into the RSS feed, there's only about 100 episodes. That you can find like on Spotify or iTunes like that, and they just the rest of them are cataloged on my feed. And somebody just the other day wrote me and says, "Hey Ron, am I mistaken, or have you never done an episode about Britneys?" And I said, Well, that was the other reason I said I got to get a hold of Tana and see when I can get her on here.
Sure.
I don't see him in the versatile world a lot. I used to see him when I first started judging in NAVDA. There was a guy in Wisconsin that, he was at every test. He had a good-sized kennel operation going. Is the Brittany less popular now, or is it just not as popular in the magazine articles and the testing? Where do they shine?
I would say maybe it's a little bit less popular now, but I do talk. I have one of my students, one of my guys, is doing really well with his short hair in NAVDA, and they're seeing a lot more Britneys in NAVDA now.
I've seen a few. Yeah, there was like a spell there where I just didn't see any, and I think last year was the last year I judged, but I think I saw 2 or 3 of them, but they were. We can probably go down this rabbit hole. They were French Britneys. So now that's not to say it's not a Brittany, but that's to say it's how do you look at that difference when somebody mentions French Brittany instead of American Brittany?
AKC is going to have to make a decision and get on board with that. This has been debated for a while, but based on the Britneys I've seen over the last, say, 20 years, there's definitely, they are 2 distinct breeds.
Do you really see the personality,
Yes.
all the inherited traits? You're seeing a real difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When was the first time, Tana, that you heard the term French Brittany? Because you've been at this for a long time with American Brittanys.
Before they got really super popular, because I have a good friend named Fred Overby, who's a French Brittany breeder, and hunted over some of his French Brittanys, and so knew the quality was there with those French Brittanys. So it's been many, many years ago, probably at least 25 years ago.
And for some reason, I would say it's almost like when you hear people talk about labs, they go, "I've got an English lab," right?
Right.
They don't say they have an American lab. They said, "Oh yeah, I just picked up an English lab." It's like, well, it's a lab, isn't it? But they are kind of split. What would you say are the big differences? If I know it's painting it with a broad brush, but
it's everything from coat. For example, on American Brittany, there is no black in the coat of an American Brittany. They're liver and white or orange and white.
Right.
Or roan. French Brittanys can carry black, orange, and liver, and any combination of that color, and they can be full saddle color, a lot of color.
Oh, okay, I got you.
And they have and then they have black furnishings. So they have black mascara around their eyes, and their noses are black.
Gotcha.
Can be black. So they carry black in their coat.
And is that something that, have you ever dived into the history I mean, the Britneys came here, I'm assuming, at some point. And probably it's one of the older breeds in the States.
In the early, in the 20s, 30s. They
Right.
were all French, not very long ago. They were all French.
They were all French Britneys because that's where they imported them from.
Yes.
And then at that point, you think, and this is just a little speculation, just like we're, killing time sitting in a bus station. Do you think those Britneys came over because they were either liver and white or orange and white? Did they just not get any of the kind of like the short hairs? Like, you know how like 30 years ago you wouldn't see a black short hair, but they were always in. Is that how it was with the? For some reason,
it was. Yeah, because if you look back at the photographs that we have, they were all that way. They came that way. Yeah. But we put the American Brittanys. We put the higher tail set on them. We put the little leggy. We changed their coats. We changed the curliness of the coat. That's all been Americanized.
Right, and that's a breeding procedure.
Yes. Yep.
What do you look for, like when you're setting besides a lot of talent, of course, the inherited talent, but is there a size that you would, if you could tweak it, if you could just wave a wand and make the litter come out, how would you tweak the Brittany that you want to put in somebody's hands? What would it look like?
They would all be about 38, 39, 40 pounds, not too small and not too big.
And what about like the nose and the muzzle? Because you mentioned Winston, and I remember seeing a picture of that dog. You're right, it did not look like a Brittany head, right? And he was so big.
Well, I've always been known for my dogs with the chiseled, blocky heads and big muzzles.
Okay.
My dogs don't have any problem picking up a soaking wet 8-pound rooster.
Gotcha.
Or swimming to go get it.
Or swimming to get a. Do they do good in the water too?
Mine do.
Yeah.
They have to. They have to. Where we hunt, they have to make water retrieves.
And did you see? I would say that's probably not. I guess again, I sometimes you only have enough time to paint things with a broad brush. It might have been one of the reasons that they never got a lot of popularity in the versatile word because they might have had to fight that strong water desire, possibly. But
possibly, I don't know. I guess we'd have to. I don't know. I don't know who would have that answer.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know.
Because you can't totally talk to the field trial guys about that, and you can't totally. To me, there's two Brittany worlds. There's the field trial Britneys, and there's the hunting Britneys. And the two worlds don't collide all that often.
Oh, really? It is that separate, huh?
Well, the hunting dogs, everybody wants a pedigree with a champion in it. And field dogs are vetted in the field. The champions are the ones that win and find birds. So we use field trial vetted dogs in the pedigrees, but it doesn't necessarily make them hunters.
Right. It just shows it shows characteristics off to a set of judges.
Yes, trainable, amenable to training and handling.
Right.
Ability to learn, listen.
Which everybody needs, whatever kind of dog you're getting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
so. I mean, the field trial world is vetting more dogs, but I do a fair amount. There still needs to be further vetting. I like that building that perfect dog. For a Brittany, we get some really good hunting in late season. So when it turns really cold in November here, I need a dog that can go out hunting when it's 10 degrees above zero, right after a snowstorm, because that's when we get payback for roosters, because they don't want to run.
Yeah.
And they'll get up and fly, and it's payback time for Mr. Rooster.
I've heard other people say they only enjoy hunting them. I mean, they hunt them, but they only enjoy hunting them after a snowfall, so they can actually
it's vengeance time, right? It's time for vengeance, and so I like a little bit bigger dog that can stand up in cattails with a little moisture, a little snow. So you need to be around that 40-pound mark.
Right. Otherwise, it's almost like in the small spaniel world, they just don't even have enough body weight to bust through that kind of stuff.
You got to bounce off those snowdrifts or pound your way through it somehow.
Right.
So there comes a time. But I've had some really great little pocket rocket Britneys who could snorkel through anything. Mm-hmm. But what they lack in size, they have to make up for in prey drive. I've always bred dogs that are true predators. They're predators.
That's something that if there's one thing you wouldn't give up, you might say, I'll go to this line if it's maybe not as tall as I want, or maybe
right. Yeah. And bring in some of that must kill something today predator thing. If there's no birds around, they'll find something to kill.
Come on, Tana, you're disappointing all the Brittany people out there that they're like, I'm always telling the people to stay away from the wire hairs, and the Drahthaars and some of the German dogs. And you're telling me you want these kick ass and take name Britneys? That's what you.
Well, mine always have. They are predators. They have relentless desire to keep hunting.
That sounds incredible. I mean, it really does. And
I mean, I remember being down in Wilcox, Arizona, and it's dark, and having to go back out with flashlights to try to find the puppies because as soon as they knew we were heading towards the trucks, they wouldn't come near the truck. They wanted to keep hunting, so you have to go find them. They just don't want to stop.
Sounds like a little cooperation problem there, Tana.
Yeah, exactly. They don't I'm not quitting. I'm not ready to quit yet.
So a really good friend of mine used to say, we can swear on the podcast. I don't tend to swear on the podcast, but when it's appropriate, he said, I never liked a dog that didn't have a little fuck you in it.
Oh, yeah. They got to be on the edge. I think it's the same gene allele that has predator also has stamina.
Sure, they find
they're paired on the same genome. Yeah,
kind of like natural athletes in the human world. Like there's just some people that I think they have to exercise or they have to. You know what I mean? They're just. I'm not one of them, but there's a certain kind of gur you're looking for.
Yes.
So will you admit or decline to admit? Will they take a cat if they ran across a cat out in the field?
Probably.
It could have happened.
Yes.
Okay.
It probably has happened.
we just don't bring them to the taxidermist and say, mount this for me.
No.
Well, no. My Bronco, which one of the things after 20 years of some short hairs and a long spell with wire hairs, and so many, everything from a couple of times, fawn deer, let alone the raccoons and the skunks and woodchuck. I mean, my God, they would hunt woodchucks. Like they'd know in the summertime when I took them for a run, they're like, pretty good chance I'm going to find a woodchuck,
Yeah.
And then I got these Broncos that didn't seem to have any passion for fur, and it's probably because of the, whatever the Italians concentrated on. It wasn't about fur. And I thought, well, God, I finally got a dog that's kind of bulletproof from killing my neighbor's cats. And old Bravo, when he was about 8 years old, turned into a killing machine. I was like, God. But
it's terrible. I mean, I love cats. I have cats. We have them in the dogs. They're taught as puppies to leave the house cats alone.
Right. And they can do that. They can certainly do that.
But, they have to, we have to be very watchful when we pull into a farmer's yard that they don't go after the farm cats or the.
Yeah.
But, they're in a trailer or a truck and they're not given access.
Right. Like I said, when you said Fred Overby, I'm like, oh, you know what? I did have an interview with him many years ago, so I can actually say this may be my second Brittany episode. So,
there you go.
I'll have to get back a hold of him. He was a good guest.
He's a good guy. Yeah, he spends half the year in Georgia and half the year in Bozeman. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So advice is a Brittany has to have just a little, what do you say, a little on the edge. It's got to be almost hard. Do you like them almost hard to control, or do you get the cooperation? Do you get enough cooperation in your breeding to where they're still, I don't want to say easy to train, but normal training methods?
Normal training methods, yeah.
Will get you where you're going.
Yeah. A Brittany.
Uh-oh.
Delmar taught me this years ago. Dogs learn in 3s, 5s, and 7s.
Yeah, what does that mean?
You show it. 1, 3s, 5. You show it to them once, 3 times, or 5 times. They won't show you they have understanding of the concept on the 2nd time or the 4th time.
I heard that a long time ago, and I'm so glad we're talking today, Tana, because I heard many people say that a few times, and it was like one of those statements that I didn't want to go, what?
Bird dogs learn in 3s, 5s, and 7s.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I would never.
But we hardly ever get to 5. We don't almost never have to go to 3. But I teach them in 3s.
So kind of paint a picture what that looks like. I mean, like if we took a segment of training.
So a segment of training in my training yard. So I would have 3 different barrels. One in a little yard, one out by the house, one out back. And I start out a little puppy on a clicker session, and we go through a series of the 3 barrels. Make it a fun little out chasing butterflies and bumblebees. And, oh, look, there's a barrel here. Up on the barrel, click, click, and down off the barrel and on a little ways to the next barrel. And in 3s. And then pretty soon I've got them on the barrel, and, oh, my goodness, we're launching birds. And we just happen to do 3 different sets of launchers. And they'll be on the barrel for the first launch. Second launch, they'll come off the barrel, try to chase, and the 3rd launch, they'll stand on the barrel and won't move. They get it on the 3rd one.
Oh, I'm going to have to come out and get some tutelage from you. Tana, you just made this sound, I don't want to say easy, but I've never heard it explained like that before.
It's consistently 3s.
Wow.
It works.
How early, you've met Justin McGrail before, and that's how you and I got connected.
Right.
You wanted to see if Justin can come out and do a seminar, and we talked about the Upland Institute. And
right, because I was so excited when I first saw that you guys had done it. I was just so grateful, because you get approached by so many people, and as hard as you work, you can't help everybody.
Right.
And it was finally a place and a person to send them to where they could at least listen and watch. Yeah.
And get some vernacular and get some eyeballs on what it's supposed to look like. Makes your job easier later then.
Much. It's just been a godsend, because you can get some people on the same page with you.
Right.
Because people today have they have limited time to train. Mm-hmm. And Justin was just, you guys have done such a great job with the filming and the layout and the way you put it together. And it's just a great tool for those of us that are out in the trenches teaching the people.
Right. I know one of the things he said was, my goal would be that anybody that comes to me for training a dog had already put the dog through the class. He says, I'd give them a discount, because I know that they did some good basics with the dog before I get the dog, Right. And that's kind of what I require it. People want to work with me. If they want a private session, I say, well, you have to get on there and at least get if it's a young dog, watch the fundamental section, or at least get on there and familiarize yourself with what we're going to be doing. Well, that's good to hear. I appreciate that more than you could know. But I gotta, next I'm going to see Justin on Sunday, and we're going to be filming a little extra content to keep things, keep things fresh. And you can't cover everything when you're doing a training video. But I know he's always been he'll recommend, Delmar's book if you can find it anywhere anymore,
Sure.
I've never heard him mention 1s, 3, 5s, and odd numbers like that. I wonder at some point maybe a trainer just kind of does it without thinking about it. That's
I think so. Yeah, I think
it's second nature.
I think Delmar and Rick just happened to figure it out.
Almost like, hey, guess what? Is that a coincidence?
Wow.
Or like the third time didn't it? Yeah.
But I see it now. I've done it so much. Like I drove down to Powell, Wyoming a couple weeks ago because I had three different people bought pups out of my last litter, and they happened to, 2 of them lived in Cody and 1 lived in Powell. Mm-hmm. And they all wanted I always say, get your guns and birds started by 20 weeks. So coming up on that 20-week mark, and I wanted to make sure those dogs got started. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'll come down and I'll help you guys get started. And so I get the dogs going, and I knew on the 3rd rep the dog was going to stay there. And the first thing they asked me is, how did you know it was going to do that? And I said, well, because it was the 3rd time. And we had done the other 2 things 3 times. And I also just said, well, I can't really tell you why I know that. You just know it, yeah,
right? It's like when I see a big black cloud, it's
pretty reliable.
That's interesting.
It is very reliable, especially if you have done, if you have worked with the young dog and opened its thinking side of its brain, done a little quicker, taken it someplace, socialized it. Done your prep.
Puppy walks and all that.
Puppy walks. If you've got the brain going, the ones that have been stuck in a crate and haven't been socialized or worked with, takes a little longer to get that going.
Right. Have you ever seen where somebody kind of dropped the ball, but still the dog came out okay? Because
actually, I have that happen to me all the time because people bring you dogs and expect you to work a miracle.
Oh, okay.
So, in fact, I just did one this spring, a 4-year-old Brittany that had never been off the long line.
Wow.
And I was actually blown away because when I cut her loose, she actually didn't know how to run. She couldn't lope.
Right. She was just kind of used to dragging a check cord. Yeah.
Pulling. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so she had to actually learn how to use her muscles.
Wow.
But she had enough drive at 4 years. I did get her pointing and was shooting birds over her.
Wow.
But there's some of it's a lost cause.
Well,
there is a benchmark, like George Hickox will teach you more about the benchmarks in the training where your rate of return drops tremendously.
Right.
If you fail to meet certain benchmarks.
Yeah, and you mentioned 20 weeks, Tana. Talk about that a little bit. That's something you've learned over the time. Like by 20 weeks, I want them to know what a bird is, and I want them to know what a gunshot is. Is that about?
Yeah. Yes. By 20 weeks, well, George taught me this. Mm-hmm. As the U.S. military did all the research on how a dog's brain develops, what they learn and when, is you really need to show the dog what it's going to be doing as an adult by 20 weeks. There's a window of opportunity that closes in the dog's brain at that point.
Wow. Interesting.
It's not to say that you won't get results, but to maximize the result, the talent that their mamas and daddies gave them.
Yeah.
So I do birds and guns by 20 weeks, and we have to be really careful with some puppies are a little soft for that, but we have the tools, we have the equipment keeps getting better. We have soft stim, E-stim, we have low soft stim. We have ways of introducing dogs to simulation now where that's
you couldn't do 20 years ago.
Yeah. Used to be collars had 3 levels, hot, hot, and hot.
yeah. And the last thing you want to do is put that on a 20-week-old dog.
Yeah, you can't do
Right.
that. It doesn't work. We don't need to do that anymore.
Oh, that's
we
that.
don't really need the stimulation at all. We teach it first. We never use an e-collar to teach a command. Almost never.
Right. Do you rely on a woe post and a check cord for a lot of work? Is that a
Yes.
solid tool in your toolbox?
Yeah, and not even so much a woe post anymore. Just the check cord and eventually some e-collar. Soft stem collars have made it a lot easier to basically teach the point of contact, the same as a woe post.
As a woe post would.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, that's a finesse and a learned thing. It's not like I would almost tell people, like, if you don't know what you're doing, take the old school path.
Yeah, definitely.
But
yeah.
once you learn, you're like, yeah, I can get that same result because you know what you're looking for in the result, and that's the key to being a good trainer.
Yeah, and today it's always getting the results with the least amount of pressure put on the dog. We don't jerk them around. We don't. I can't tell you the last time I spun a dog. I don't do that anymore.
Right, but that was kind of
and-
a thing back in the day, right? It was like, turn a mass over tea kettle sometimes.
Yeah, it was part of the evolution of training, and we continue. I hope, when I'm gone, the trainers will have it even better. They'll know even more about how dogs learn and how to maximize their brain potential and how to teach them things quicker and better.
Yeah, and I think people forget, like, if you just even think about a house dog, and I want to kind of go back. At one point, you said you're training a lot of house dogs now. Basically, you're training a bird dog, but a dog that gets so acclimated to being in a house and being one of the children, that puts a layer of difficulty in it for you, I would think, right?
Totally, yeah. So usually you have to tack on an extra week to 10 days. And they say, well, how long is it going to take? It takes a week just to get them through the pout.
The pout? I like that.
The pout. Because they're not on the bed and they're in a kennel with all these other dogs and they're not being treated like a child or a princess or a prince. Mm-hmm. And they'll pout. They'll put on a pretty good sized pout and shut down a little bit. You got to work through the pout and you got to convince them that, oh, wow, this is kind of a fun place to be.
Right. Doesn't matter where you sleep at night, but you're going to get some fun while you're here.
Yeah, and so we make it fun and get the outings, get them out and get them going out. And all that pout goes away.
And that's
the
not
most part.
That's not
Yeah.
well, yeah. We have to talk for the general terms because there's always those outliers,
Sure.
Like the 4-year-old that ends up hunting, or the 4-month-old that you're just like, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. You have spoiled this dog to the point that if he was in school, he'd have to go to special ed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say with the training the house pets, I will say the clicker has really helps with that, because these house pets are really keyed in on treats and yum-yums and clicker training is kind of right up their alley because it's something they recognize.
Yeah, and I know George has that in one of his videos. He used to send me a stack of them to give to people.
And I learned it from George, and I morphed it into but it really works. It's a segue. Rick and I used to argue about it all the time. Rick's like, that clicker is, you're not going to take a clicker out in the field. Well, of course you're not. We wean them off the clicker very quickly, but the clicker gives me a segue to the next stages that I'm going to get to eventually. And I found it as a tremendous tool. It's a tool in my toolkit, just like the old pinch collar, the check cord, the
slip lead, whatever.
It's a tool. It's a tool, and it's a very helpful tool for the spoiled dogs that are in a pout.
I like that.
That's another thing that was always our bread and butter, was just stick them on the chain gang, right?
Sure.
You'd go to a Smith seminar in the late 90s, and those dogs just had to do their spell on the chain gang. Well, Nobody uses a chain or a stakeout today. You go to a training session and you tell somebody they've got to put their dog on a stakeout, and they will fight you. They will not do it.
Oh, they'll say like, oh, he doesn't like
He'll
that.
be fine in the crate. He doesn't like that.
Right.
So we don't, on the first Saturday morning of a Rick Smith seminar, it's all battling the 30 dogs on the chain gang.
Right.
Quieting them down. And so I just finally grew to the point where I wasn't going to go there with these people because they're not going to do it when they get home. Mm-hmm. You got to meet them where they're at.
Talking about the tie-out stake and a chain gang, like I agree 100%. I think that's been lost, but I think it's coming back a little bit, and it was something that Justin made sure we put in the Upland Institute.
Right, right. And I saw it there, and I'm like, yes, someone who's still using a stakeout. There's a time and a place to use it.
Right, and I used to have a concrete pad when I had my short hairs, my first wire hairs, and I put an O-ring in it, and it was in the shade. And I probably learned it from. I didn't go to any of the Smith seminars, but I probably talked to somebody who told me this is what you do, and I'm sure they learned it from there.
Sure.
And I remember my first dogs, every one of them like 3 months old or 4 months old. I'd put them on there and they'd knock the bowl of water over or whatever. But then they would just calm down. Right. And Wednesday night, speaking of Britneys, we had a fella that had 2 that he got from a breeder, which, we were teasing him like, oh, you never get 2 at a time when you're an amateur, And another young fella that came with a Brittany. And his name was Andy, and Andy put the dog, he put it in a harness, right? So there was the point of contact wasn't on the neck.
Right.
And I said, next week, make sure you show up with just a regular ID collar on the dog. But we did have him go put him over on the chain gang, which we keep at our grounds. And we watched him, and it was the change that a dog does when he realizes that it's not all about him. He's like, oh, I guess I'm just in line at the ticket counter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They, like Rick used to say, they have to give up their union card.
I like that. So, I mean, if there's a takeaway, it's like if there's one thing we could do to help dog breeders is like use that tie-out stake when they're young, use it properly, let them, they got to know that we got to be a team. It's not Team Brittany or Team Wirehair. It's Team you and me.
Yeah, it's not a dogmocracy.
That goes back to my other thing. I always go down these rabbit holes when I think of them. I've got 3 daughters, and they all have children right now, right? They from a year to 2 years to 2.5 to 4, right? And as I'm 64 years old, and I watch these kids running around our house, and my wife's got the back room kind of gated off, but they get the whole back room, right? And I said, when I was a kid, I had a playpen. That was it. It was a wooden rail playpen. Because my mom had to iron and cook and vacuum and whatever.
Yeah, and you weren't allowed to empty out all the pots and pans all over hell.
For some reason, I never got to go into a kitchen and empty out all the drawers. Right? Yeah. And then all of these kids, and I love my grandkids dearly, but I want to go, and I asked my girls, like, did you guys not remember the stories we told you? You 3 were raised in a playpen. They've forgotten it. You know what I mean? Because they don't. And again, they're going to do it.
Those little dogs are the same.
Yeah.
When you get them in for training, they're just. Yeah.
They're used to having everything, aren't they?
Yeah. And no impulse control.
Exactly. And that's what that's about. That's what the tie-out's about, right? It's impulse.
And it's also dogs learn by association.
Sure.
So they're learning the point of contact at the neck, and they have to blame it on the stake.
Right.
They can't blame it on me. I'm not standing there doing it.
Right. They're like, oh, damn it.
Yeah.
What?
So you always have to keep in mind dogs learn everything by association, whether you want to admit it or not. They learn through association.
Yeah, it's like the only way they can do it. Right.
It's the only way they do learn. And when you get that concept, you can teach them to do anything.
Yeah, and then later on you have the leash on their neck, and they kind of remember that, right? It's
Totally.
like
Yeah, it's a layering of all the, you teach them, George already says, the new thing before the learned thing.
I should get a T-shirt for that, for
Yeah,
training.
that should be on a T-shirt.
The new thing
before the learned thing.
I like that.
That's how everything is done.
I had talked to a fella that did not go through the course, but I gave him some tips, and I said one of the things was a tie-out steak. He didn't, and you're not surprised, he did not know what a tie-out steak was.
And then the worst thing you can do is buy one of those corkscrew things.
Right, because it's too much give.
The dog immediately pulls it out of the ground and goes running around with it in terror.
And learned by association that I can pull this out on the ground.
Yeah,
and I told
that sucker in with a 9-pound hammer into the ground. Sorry.
Right. So I tell people when they think about it, like when I'm trying to explain it to them, I said, think about a horseshoe steak. Like you put a horseshoe steak to play horseshoes, right? That's a big rod, hard in the ground. If it wasn't in the ground good, you couldn't play horseshoes on it. The dog has to hit the end of that line, and the guy said, he goes, I don't understand what that's going to do for the dog. And I said, all right, picture a police officer handcuffing you to a wall, right? Like you're in a detention. You are not going to keep pulling on that to the point where your wrist breaks, because we know that, like, I can't fight that. But dogs.
Yeah, eventually they admit it that they've got to just sit there and wait.
Exactly, and that's such, like, I would give anybody advice, if you do one thing with a new dog, let it learn to be on a tie-out stake or a chain gang. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a gem back then, and it's still relevant today.
Do you when you do your training, do you bring out? Do people come to your place, Tana, to train, or do you go meet them? I know you said you went and saw some of the Brittany.
Both. Yeah, most of the time I have the people come here because I love to use launchers, and I love to use my homing pigeons, and we can do so much training with homing pigeons.
Right.
And so but like I say, a couple weeks ago I did drive down to Wyoming and did a short clinic for 3 puppies there, and I work with the local gun dog club guys, and so we move around a little bit. So
when you went down to see those puppies out of your litter, how does your evaluation change? Are you thinking more like of just helping?
I want to see what that litter produced.
That's what I thought.
I had to see.
Right.
I want those puppies to get started correctly, so they'll be having birdshot over them right away because they're old enough.
Right.
But I always like to go look at my pups so I see what I produced.
Yeah, when possible, it's ideal then.
Yeah. I follow up with my people. And if I could change anything in hunting dogs, it would be I would like breeders to step up and follow up on what they produced.
Yeah.
Because some of them sell dogs to people they never should have sold dogs to.
Yeah, because they really didn't have any intention of following up with them.
No,
Yeah.
and these guys, I get them all the time. They're in over their head. I got one student right now. He's got a dog out of horse field trial horse. The dog was bred to run a half mile in front of a horse.
Right.
And so unfortunately we've had to put more pressure on that dog than I ever would put on a dog that age.
Right.
But the wife and daughter are in love with the dog, and that they're keeping him.
Right.
That dog's always going to be a bit slippery. I've warned him, he's always going to be a bit slippery.
Yeah. Yeah, I had some friends like that in school.
Yeah.
Mrs. Fleming could get them to sit through the 8th grade year, but they were always going to be a little slippery.
Yes. Yep. So yeah. And so I try to take these guys and give them the tools so they can at least find a bird. I've had to take guys and sit down with them and show them the block management maps and show them how to go access the public land, and teach them how to read, get Onyx, or actually teach them how to read a gazetteer map.
Yeah.
and teach them what gumbo is. You have to tell them what gumbo is.
Right. That's a road situation that you don't want to be stuck in, right?
Yes, important.
For those of you that are unenlightened and live only like in Missouri or Illinois, the roads in Montana with a little bit of rain can stop you in your tracks.
For days.
For
yeah.
days.
You're not moving anywhere. Yeah.
Well,
they have gumbo. They have red gumbo in Georgia, don't they? Have Georgia gumbo, don't they?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like they have those big tracks of BLM to go through and open gates and
you aren't moving.
Right,
Yeah.
you're not getting so deep that you couldn't walk out. But yeah, I hunted in Wyoming one time that was so far back. I think we opened 6 gates and closed them to get to where we were going. And luckily, I was with somebody who had been there before. We were looking for sage grouse, and all of a sudden, he goes like, I don't like the way this sky looks. We got to get out of here. I'm like, what? It doesn't look, I mean, it looks bad way out there. He goes, yeah, but if that comes this way, we're not getting out of here today or tomorrow. I was like,
no, you respect gumbo. Gumbo is a big deal.
Almost as much as a tie-out steak. Tana, give me a pitch for, and I know I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Give me a pitch for why somebody would want to get a Brittany, because I still see enough of them. But what is it that you really love about them?
The Brittany is the workhorse of the pointing breeds. Day in and day out, no matter who owns them, who trains them, they're going to go out and find a bird, point it, and make a reasonable effort to bring it to you.
So the retrieving is still good in the gene pool. Like, I mean, we can work on trained retrieve later, but natural retrieving is still good.
Yes, it is in my line of dogs.
Right.
I can't tell you the last time I had to force break one of my dogs.
Oh, really? I mean, even if you were gonna now, have you competed in recent years, or that back in the day you did a little competition?
I mean, we did a lot of Nastra for years.
Okay.
Years and years and years. No, my dogs retrieve. But the Brittany is, by and large, it's a great dog for a first bird dog, first upland bird dog. They are very forgiving of your training mistakes.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
In my opinion, a setter, if you make a training mistake with a setter, they ain't never going to forget it, and they'll bring it up 5 years from now and remind you, remember when you did that?
Oh, God, you might as well be married and have a wife remind you when you forgot to take out the garbage.
Yeah, exactly. And then the German breeds, you got to teach them the same damn thing every day.
Yeah,
they're Brittany's sort of in the middle. You show it to them 3 times, and they got it. And they're on board, and they're, happy doing it.
Yeah. I've been around.
And I've board a lot of dogs, and for the most part, they aren't barky. And they don't climb out.
Yeah, which there are some dogs that will just say, you know what, if I can't get out, I'll climb out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not because...
Anyway, but they're a workhorse. They're easily trained, biddable, good family companions. They have low maintenance coats. They're a 30 to 40 pound tailless breed. They don't clear the coffee table with their tail.
Oh, that's a big plus for sure. Yeah. When you say tailless breed, that's something, and I don't think anybody would have thought of this until I just thought of it. Do you still dock the Dales on Britneys, or do some of them actually come up short-tailed or not tailed, or how does that work?
There are some natural docks, but we still dock them.
You still dock them?
Yeah.
And
at some point, I would imagine we won't be able to do that anymore. But
well, that's what's happening around the world. So yeah.
Yeah. So, they're docked, and I don't like doing it. It's my least favorite thing with the puppies, but I love having a docked tail.
Right.
Dog.
It just gets in the way. A long tail just gets in the way. It really does.
It's whapping you, or I don't know. They're pretty. I mean, they're really beautiful when they hold the setter. There's nothing like a setter or a pointer. The Cadillac of the pointing breeds.
Sure.
Watching that tail, it's absolutely spectacular.
Right.
I get that. Now,
you said natural. Do some of them come out with a
with a bobtail, yeah.
They really do. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's just almost like enough hundreds of years of us kind of
Throwback, sort of throwback, yeah.
Wow.
Because they're, the Brittany has the setter in them. The French peasants took their spaniels and bred them to the gentry, the British gentry setters.
Right. I remember hearing that with Craig Koshik's book talking about that.
Yeah.
How the east of the Rhine and west of the Rhine, and then kind of like what was going on with the pointers and setters in the UK. Then I forget maybe it was after World War I or something before that. They kind of infused that to a lot of the French breeders. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And we still see occasionally you'll see a Brittany set.
Oh, really? Really?
Set on point.
Just go flat down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's from generations, hundreds and hundreds of years.
Some sort of a funky throwback thing.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we don't see it very often.
Yeah, that would be not a thing. Now, this is a question that came up. Now, I've got this new breed for me, this wire-haired Vizsla. And I can honestly say I really, really like this dog's demeanor, personality. And people, a lot of times, it's almost like that old saying that, never shoot a rabbit for my dog. I don't want him hunting rabbits, and I only want him pointing. And how do you feel about teaching the sit command to a dog?
I hate it because it's always a default. I generally tell my people, and the obedience people will tell you that's ridiculous, but just keep it easy and don't teach them to sit. Just tell them to have them stand. Just say wait. To me, George taught me a working cue. The working cue is wait. It means stand still and don't move.
Okay.
And the working cue is used around the house, the yard, and we save whoa for when we've merged our training and we're training around birds. Then it's really easy to make wait into whoa. But people are people, and they'll tell Fido to wait to kennel up 8 times. Fido heard you the first time and turned his ear off the other 7 times that you said it. And
right.
So because we're human, I don't like people wearing out that whoa word.
Right.
So I use working cues. So I tell them to wait, which means stand still and don't move.
And then you could use whoa later on, but the wait is like the beginning part of it.
Right.
Yeah. And this breeder from Hungary, she's very big on sit, and I was like, well, I'm certainly not gonna argue with her. Her dogs perform well. I don't see him sit on a point or anything, but to your point, when the dog's a little confused, they tend to go there, as you said, for a default.
Yeah, it's a default. It's a default for this. Even the most take a 6-week-old puppy, take the littlest puppy. And what the first thing they'll do is sit.
Right. If they ran up to you and you looked at them, but you didn't pay attention to them, they sit for whatever genetic.
That's the first thing they'll try.
And
to get what they want, or try to find the answer.
And of course, with the home dogs and the pet dogs, it's the first trick we teach them, right? Sit and give them a treat.
It's the first thing they're rewarded instantly with aren't you cute?
He knows how to sit already. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. I have relied on that a little bit. I haven't seen a problem with it, but it's something that I kind of stayed away from back in the day. But this gal, she was like, she has her dog sit all the time, and
I don't know. I guess I'd have to see her and see her method and how she goes. Because I've been around a few Vizslas. I think they're a lovely breed, but I've been around some fairly soft ones. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you look at them cross-eyed, and they just kind of cave.
Yeah, and I think that's where I shouldn't even maybe bring up those subjects sometimes about sit, because a dog that's like really well balanced in the head and talent, it probably doesn't matter.
It doesn't
right?
matter. It
Right.
doesn't matter. But I'm talking about the ones that come in. You got 6 weeks to turn them into a bird dog. It really helps me if they're not sitting every 20 seconds.
So, what's the future plans for right now with you? Or you kind of mentioned mentoring more than training. Is that just because you're so busy, or how does that work out, Tana?
Well, I don't know. I like doing the mentoring because I like working with these guys one-on-one or two-on-two, and we really get a lot done in a very short time.
And then they take their dog back home. So they come to you with their dog, more
Yeah.
like. Okay.
Yeah. Or we move. I'll say, okay, meet me over at the blah 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 place at 5:00, and I show up with birds and launchers and maybe some homers.
Right.
And we generalize the training in that way. But they have to tell the secretary, I've got to go train my dog, and I'm out of here at 5 or whatever, and they have to show up.
Right.
And so the dog gets the benefit of consistent training because the guys have made the appointment with me and they show up.
Yeah. Which
So
is probably a little better than
consistently.
having just drop a dog off for you for training sometimes, right?
Totally, because
Yeah.
the dog gets trained. Because do the math. If you've got 50 dogs on your string and there's 14 hours of daylight,
Right. The math doesn't work out to a lot of time.
no, it's not. It's minutes. Where when I meet with these guys, we're putting a couple hours in twice a week,
Right.
and then I send them home with homework. Like, well, okay, work on that the next 2 days, and when we meet again on Friday, let's go over it again.
Yeah.
So I
Tana,
line them out, with what a little bit of homework they could do, and then we meet and we get the reps in. It's the 8 out of 10 rep rule. Some of that stuff you've got to get the reps in.
yeah. Yeah, just like anything, any kind of training.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can see where
those
that-
dogs, those birds. You got to.
You're kind of charging them for training, but you're charging them for mentoring, and you're like, you know what? This is going to be better than the guy that just drops a dog off, because you're there every week to see this or twice a week to see that.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's worked really, really well, and the guys love it because I've got all the stuff. It's my launchers, my
Pigeons.
bird cage, my crates, my bird bags. I show up, the birds are loaded in the bags, the launchers are loaded. We set up the drill and it's done. Boom. They have, I provide that service.
Yeah. And that's
So-
in the general Bozeman, Belgrade area.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How-
So
do you-
it's been good, but I wish I could clone myself. I guess if I look at the future of bird dogs, I really worry because I'd like to find a couple young guys that would like to learn how to train bird dogs.
Yeah, it's
Because
kind of.
we need them. We need bird dog trainers in this part of the country, and there aren't any. I don't have any Gen Xers meeting my door down trying to learn how to do this.
Right, saying, "Oh, I would like to be a trainer." Right.
Where are the young people?
I don't know. Well, the young people, they're busy. This is a little. We're getting a little long here, but it made me think of something else. What would you say? And this is maybe hard to do. Are you getting a lot of first timers, or do you tend to get more guys and girls that had the dog? Hey, I didn't really do much with the last one, and I want to do more with this one. What do you see a little more of?
Yeah, quite a bit of that. Yeah, that they've got a new puppy and they really want to get more out of it, do a better job of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, they need help with equipment. I help them, pick what they're going to need for a collar or a GPS, or if they're even going to need one. A lot of guys want advice on the advances in the equipment. And yeah.
Oh,
so,
yeah, right down to, yeah,
Yeah.
you're there to help them pick out if a collar if they need to, and
Yeah.
anything from a dog box, a dog crate. I mean, you probably get everything questioned, every possible question.
Absolutely everything. Yeah. Which one should I buy? What, just what food should I get? What vet should I use?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, so you just cover all the bases. But I mean,
Uh-oh.
and you just
wait.
help them maximize.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say, it's a guy who's on his second dog and he wants to really do it right. Get the reps in. And
Have you gotten any of the California Bozeman people getting their first dog to come and see you?
some.
Some.
Yeah, some. Yep.
Are they are they good students, or do you roll your eyes a little bit?
Well, I think it's a matter of expectations.
Okay.
We try to streamline the training and make it as quick and easy as possible, but comes a point where, no, you have to put the phone down and you have to do the reps.
Right.
And you have to take the check cord in your hands and actually pull on it.
Right.
So you actually have to insert yourself into the video and do it.
Yeah. Well, Tana, we could probably go on forever. And one of these days, I want to get out there.
You got to come. Yeah,
I got to come. And I know I already told somebody out, one of my listeners wants me to come out to Kalispell, which is, of course, far from you. But this year I've got Dakotas and Wyoming. But I'm going to make 2023 where I'm going to spend probably 2 to 3 weeks in Montana. Because I've only touched it. I touched it around Miles City, and then a little blue grouse hunting in West Yellowstone, or north of the park. But I haven't really traipsed around. So the next time we see each other, I'm going to tell you it'll be a year from 2022 opening, and you don't have to show me any spots, but I want to see. I want to get a better feel for the 1s, 3s, and 5s. I definitely want to get a better feel for that.
Sure, yeah. That'll be easy. Yeah. Easy.
I'll probably even bring a camera guy out there, because I think it would be sometimes a little bit of video with a lot of voiceover goes a long way.
Sure.
Because people can hear something or read something, but when they got a little picture to look at or a short video, I think
absolutely. I definitely think that. Yeah, it would be pretty easy to get a little clip of that to demonstrate it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Tana, thank you so much for coming on. We've like I said, this is the longest we've ever got to talk, and I think we got some really good information for people. If you're looking for a medium-sized dog, don't try to find a shrinky. Don't try to find the George Pesci or the Joe Pesci of short hairs. And if you
break down and get a Brittany.
Get a Brittany. and if you don't know what a tie-out stake is, do some homework and start with that. And then the 20-week thing, I think is solid information. Doesn't mean you have to do birds all the time, but get those experiences for the dog.
Yeah. At least show them a pigeon or something.
Something.
Some sort of bird.
Right.
In that 20-week framework.
They don't need one every day, but it just helps get pulled.
Just one outing. One in that time frame.
And they don't forget.
All you need I call it lighting the pilot light. Once the pilot light's lit, it will never go out.
I like that. That's perfect way to end it. Light the pilot light in your puppy.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Tana.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Well, what'd you think of that? I enjoyed that conversation with Tana. Spent many short phone calls with her over the last 3-4 months, and was really looking forward to bringing her on the podcast. And I want to thank my Patreon patrons: Pike Gear, Onyx, Weatherby, Boss Shot Shells, Waltons, Purina, Gunner Kennels, Garmin, Canine Athlete, W Hunting Supply, Deck Drawer System, and of course, the Upland Institute, which is mine. But I also want to tell you, if you're still listening, that Gumleaf Boots. Jack has got some Gumleaf boots back in stock, and the supply chain is improving. So get to Gumleaf Boots, Gumleaf USA. Check it out and get yourself a pair of boots for next year. I'm not saying they're going to be there long, and I can't tell you when the next shipment's coming in, but Jack is back, and so are gum leaf boots.